Okay, thrill seekers, that was Burnin' Love, Elvis Presley. That was the bass line from that song. And what we're going to talk about is not Burnin' Love, but kind of related. So here we have a story. This is the version in the Daily Mail. It was reported in a few newspapers. Pictured climate activist 50 who died after lighting himself ablaze in front of the Supreme Court on Earth Day, wrote 4/22/2022, and a fire emoji on Facebook post from 2020. And here's the story. A climate activist who died after setting himself on fire in front of the Supreme Court on Earth Day is a Buddhist who hinted at his future self-immolation with a fire emoji under a Facebook post from 2020. Win Bruce, 50, of Boulder, Colorado, lit himself on fire on the court's plaza at around 6:30 p.m. on Friday. He suffered critical burns and was pronounced dead at a local hospital on Saturday. On October 30th, 2020, he shared a link on an online class on climate change offered by EDX, a free online course created by Harvard and MIT. Last April, he went back and commented 4/22/2020 along with a fire emoji. Surveillance footage of the immediate aftermath of the fire showed police officers as they attempted to calm Bruce, who can be heard screaming in the background. Police are still investigating the motive, but a Buddhist priest from Boulder took to Twitter to clarify that Bruce's death was not a suicide, but a deeply fearless act of compassion. And there's another photo of Bruce. And here's the tweet. It goes like this. This guy was a friend. He meditated with our Sangha. This act is not suicide. This is a deeply fearless act of compassion to bring attention to climate crisis. We are piecing together info, but he had been planning it for at least 1 year. Hashtag Win Bruce. I am so moved. This is from Buddhist priest Sensei Kriti Kanko, who calls herself a friend of Bruce and says his death was a fearless act of compassion to bring attention to the climate crisis. Bruce's Facebook page has since been inundated with comments both praising his actions and criticizing his way of bringing attention to his cause. How can you solve the climate crisis when you leave in the middle of the fight? Now you can't do anything to be helpful, one person commented. Another wrote, I see he was a fighter for his beliefs, and that may have contributed to this tragedy. A LinkedIn profile for Win Bruce of Boulder, Colorado states he was a photojournalist who had previously attended Front Range Community College and the Community College of Denver. Supreme Court Police, Capitol Police, and DC Police all responded to the incident. A medical helicopter landed on the plaza and the individual was airlifted to a local hospital. And there's a video uploaded to Twitter, I guess. I don't recommend watching it. I'm not going to watch it. Just in, video of the police on the scene near the Supreme Court building in Washington, D.C., showing you and hearing the sounds of a person screaming in agony after he set himself on fire and after the fire was extinguished by police officers. And here's another photo of Bruce. So I've got a lot I could say about this, and I'll try to say it all. First of all, I am absolutely disgusted that a Buddhist priest of any sort, apparently she's Rinzai, I'm not sure, Zen, I believe, that any sort of Buddhist priest would say this was a deeply fearless act of compassion to bring about the attention to climate crisis. That is absolute nonsense. This person should not be teaching Buddhism at all. It's ridiculous that she would even say this. Now, I could probably cut her some slack because she knew the guy and maybe she's trying to frame it in a nice way, but even that's going too far. No, I don't even go that far. This is disgusting and not worthy of any Buddhist priest to say this. I hate to use this as a way to plug my new book, but this just came in the mail yesterday. This is the first copy I've seen, the first printed copy I've seen of my new book, The Other Side of Nothing, Zen Ethics of Time, Space, and Being. And one of the points I try to make over and over in this book is that this idea that you can do a terrible thing in order to make a good thing happen is not in line at all with the Buddhist idea of ethics. You don't do terrible things in order to make good things happen. That doesn't work. You do terrible things in order to bring terrible things into the world. To call this an act of compassion is just absurd. How was it compassionate to the friends and family of this gentleman, Bruce Wynn? How was it compassionate to the firefighters and police who had to go there and deal with a guy on fire screaming as he dies, and he doesn't even die till a day later of his injuries. How is that compassionate to just random tourists who happened to be at the Supreme Court building that day who had to watch this happen? How is it compassionate to the helicopters, one just going over my roof right now, to the helicopter people who had to airlift this guy to the hospital in a vain attempt to save his life? It's not compassionate at all. It's not compassionate to himself. It's not compassionate to anyone. And bringing about awareness of the climate crisis, come on. I didn't even know about this piece of news until somebody sent it to me. It barely made a blip on the news. It's not going to change anybody's mind. Now, I went and watched a video by this person, this so-called Buddhist priest, who should not be a Buddhist priest at all, giving a lecture about the climate crisis to the people at the San Francisco Zen Center, because of course the San Francisco Zen Center would have these kind of people on, and it's alarmist stuff. Now, I am not a climate crisis denier. I believe there is a climate crisis. It's pretty evident that there's something wrong. But when you spread alarmist stuff, there's only three types of reaction. The people who are already anxious about it are going to become more anxious, as we can see in the case of Bruce Wynn. The people who are rationally concerned, and I would count myself in that demographic, are just annoyed by it. We see this and we go, oh God, you're not helping even a little bit. And the people who are skeptical, when they see this alarmist content, they just become more skeptical. So if you want to find a way to solve the climate crisis, what you need to do is find a way to convince the people who are skeptical. And burning yourself, setting yourself on fire, or spreading alarmist rhetoric, they don't convince the skeptical. And you might ask me, well, how do you convince the skeptical? I don't know. But if I were committed to climate crisis action as an activist, I think I would be better to spend my life's work, make my life's work trying to figure out how to convince the skeptical of this. And that's the only two things I can tell you for sure about this is, number one, you've got to convince the skeptical of this, and number two, alarmist rhetoric and setting yourself on fire are not going to convince people who are skeptical that there is a climate crisis. And the last point I want to make is your life is not your own. I talked about my own near attempt at suicide in that video about the Buddhist view on suicide, where I realized that if I went out and killed myself in this little forest in the Gorge Park near Akron, or in Akron, that I was planning to do 20-some years ago, it wouldn't have... I would have been discovered by some little kid out for a stroll in the park, or some old lady, or just going for a nice walk. It's not a compassionate thing to do. My life is not my own life. My life is the possession of the universe. It's not your decision to go and set yourself on fire. Well, you can make that decision, obviously, but that is not the Buddhist way of understanding this. Your life is not your own. Your life is part of a web of intricately connected things, which are so connected they are actually one thing. So don't do it. Don't set yourself on fire. Don't listen to garbage Buddhist priests who tell you that setting yourself on fire is a deeply compassionate act, or deeply fearless act of compassion. This is an action born of fear, and I blame the Buddhist priest herself who said this for spreading the kind of fear and making this person full of anxiety and fear of the climate crisis, which eventually pushes him to the brink and gets him to do this stuff. I don't blame her entirely, but she shares part of the blame for this terrible action that this guy did. So that's my standpoint on all this. It's nonsense to call this a fearless act of compassion. It's a fearful act, which is the opposite of compassion and did a lot of harm and no good at all. Lighting yourself on fire is suicide. When this Buddhist priest tells you that it's not suicide, that it's something other than suicide, no, bull. It is suicide. And suicide is something that is universally not condoned in Buddhism. And as I said in my previous video, the only place in classical Buddhism you might see a little bit of slack given for people to commit suicide is people who are suffering from a terminal illness, and then they're kind of given a little bit of slack. But remember, this doesn't come from on high, from God. These are just people's opinions. So in opinions of Buddhist teachers of the past, that's what they've said. Violence done with good intentions is still violence. Violence done against yourself is still violence, because violence against yourself is also violence against everybody who loves you and cares about you, and everybody who has to deal with trying to put out you on fire and airlift you to the hospital. But that being said, I would like to chant the Heart Sutra for Bruce Wynn and hope that his next phase in this journey is a better one than the one he just ended. Maka hanya haramita shingo Kanji Zaibo Satsugyo Jin Hanya Haramita Jisho Kengo Onkai Kudo Isai Ku Yakushari Shikifu Iku Kufu Ishiki Shiki Sokuze Kuku Sokuze Shiki Ju Sogyo Shiki Yakubu Nyoze Shari Shize Shoho Kuso Fusho Fu Metsu Fu Kufu Jo Fu Zo Fu Genze Koku Mu Shiki Muju Sogyo Shiki Mugen ni Bizetshin ni Mu Shiki Shoko Mi Sokuho Mugen Kai Nai Shi Mu Ishiki Kai Mu Myo Yakumu Mu Myo Jin Nai Shi Mu Roshi Yakumu Roshi Jin Mu Kushu Metsudo Mu Chi Yakumu Tokui Mu Shoto Kobo Dai Sata E Hanya Haramita Koshin mu kege ko mu kufu onri sai tendo mu so kugyo ne hansan ze shobutsu e hanya haramita ko toku anoku tara samyaku sambodai Kochi hanya haramita zedai jinshu zedai myoshu zemu joshu zemu todo shu no jo isai kushinjitsu fuko kosatsu hanya haramita shu sokusatsu shu watsu gyate hara gyate araso gyate boji soaka hanya shingyo. Thank you very much, and if you want to contribute to the continuation of this video channel, you can go to the URL you are seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and Patreon accounts. Those are my main and only ways of making a living. I won't get a whole lot for this book, but I guess I will get a little bit of royalties, but that won't support me, and I continue to count on your support for my main means of income. So thank you very much, but as always, this is offered for free, so you don't gotta pay if you don't want to pay. See you later. Have a good time all the time. Don't set yourself on fire. Bye. Hey Ziggy, what do you think of all this? No, you're not gonna do something like that, are you? I doubt you could even hold a match with your paws, but I'm glad for that. Alright Ziggy, I'll see you later. Bye.